Welcome, friends. I am so glad that you've decided to join us for this 9-part journey into ego relaxation. So I always like to begin any teaching session with a short practice so that we begin opening to what I'm going to share and to any experiential components we're going to do together from presence itself. So it's always good to begin any practice with dedication. And so I invite you to bow. Let's bow to our divine true nature, which is the same true nature that lives in every single one of us. And we open ourselves to all the blessings and all the support that can be given to help us be as receptive and gain as much benefit as possible. And for that benefit to be shared amongst all beings as an offering for the whole human family. So if your eyes aren't already closed, I invite you to close them. And just turn within as I guide us into a simple meditation. Just begin by bringing your awareness to the breath. As you receive the sound of the one note, as if your own inhale is a welcome, and your own exhale is a natural melting. Feeling the breath becoming a little longer, a little slower, a little deeper. Welcoming yourself exactly as you are. And feeling the need to figure anything out or fix it. Just begin to melt. Just arriving more substantially into this moment. Being here, right where you are. Unconditionally. Nothing you need to fix or get or do. Just let yourself be drawn into the very center of your being. Where the refuge of peace and love and joy and freedom is always shining. Where you are already whole. and naturally part of everything that truly is. Breathe the clean air of your true nature. And let us remember that we breathe this clean air as a gift for ourselves and for everyone, and for our loved ones and our world. I'm sure you're here because you want to experience more of the peace and freedom of moving beyond the limitations, the constraints of ego, and access more of the grace of your true nature, who you really are underneath the dust of your conditioning. So we all want to not only experience our true nature, but to actually learn to come from our true nature as we move through daily life, so that we can actually come from a place of inner peace and clarity and truth, rather than come from reactivity, so that we can actually embody our love and our spiritual depth in our world that really needs it more than ever. And for this, we really need a lot of help, and most of all, we need grace. So the great Indian sage Ramana Maharshi once said that grace is always present. You imagine it somewhere high in the sky that has to descend, but really it is inside you, in your heart. And the moment you merge the mind into its source, grace rushes forth, sprouting as if from a spring within you. We all want that, grace rushing forth from within us as a spring, bringing back online the noble qualities that are deep down inside every single one of us. But there's something that's blocking that possibility, and I'm sure you already know, because, for most of us, we don't necessarily have the access to this grace, to the noble qualities of our true nature. We don't experience being as free and as clear as we kind of intuitively know we could. So I'm inviting you not to settle for just a little bit of peace and happiness on the side, not just a little bit of respite from your anxiety, but I'm inviting you to really take up the path that is saying it's possible. It is your destiny. In fact, the Christian mystic Meister Eckhart, he said, it is the destiny of every soul, of every man and woman and child, to see as God sees, to know as God knows, to feel as God feels, to be as God is. And while you may or may not use the G word, I do, so you'll have to deal with that with me, I'm sorry. Really, it is our destiny to be the divine beings that we fundamentally are. to be that unified and clear, to know what we are and to live from that in life. And so even if right now you don't yet feel that sense of unity and oneness and the freedom and the possibility as your emotional reality, the reason for that for all of us is this word we call ego, which is a term that's used in spiritual teachings throughout the ages and also in psychological understanding. But when I use the term ego, what I'm really meaning is our fundamental construct of separation, right? That we're taking ourselves to be a separate somebody. We're taking the borders of where our body ends to be, okay, what's within that is me, and everything outside those physical borders are not me. So this is most people's experience, right? That's what's called the phenomenological aspect of ego, right? Every human being comes onto the planet and has that as their foundation for reality until it starts to break down. So that tells us that the fact of ego isn't a mistake, it's not wrong, it's not something that shouldn't have happened. It's part of the foundation of becoming a human being. But it doesn't represent the fullest possibilities, it just represents the first stage. But ego, when I say ego, I'm also referring to the way that our sense of being a separate someone has become patterned into a personality through the process of conditioning. And as I'm sure you know, that is very personal to each one of us. That happens through our childhood, those first years of life, and how our environment is, and the beliefs and the constructs and the patterns that get laid down from that. So the metaphor that I use for what ego really is like is a big hard block of ice, right? So this construct of separation and all our patterns and conditioning, all of the great spiritual traditions all agree that in order to live into our highest possibilities, we need to break that down. Although if you try to hack away at that ice block, then, I mean, that can work to break it down, that can work to transform that hard block of ice. But so too does putting the ice block out into the yard and letting the warmth of the sun take effect. So notice how the warmth of the sun is very, very effective at melting the hardness, the density, the places where you have become hard or dense or patterned or fixated, right? So in a way, this is akin to ego relaxation as an approach to letting the concerns and constraints, the density, the parts of ourself that are obstructing the flow of grace, obstructing the fullest possibilities spiritually. So one thing about this metaphor of a hard block of ice is that if you see a hard block of ice, you know from your own experience that ice is made of water. That even though ice is hard and dense and opaque, it behaves very differently to water. It's no longer clear. It's no longer hydrating necessarily. It's useful, but it's clunkier, right? It's lost its natural fluidity, its natural flexibility, its natural freedom. So ice has become opaque. It's no longer clear, right? And so if we use that as a metaphor, it helps us to understand that our ego isn't a demon. It's not something that shouldn't be, right? But it does bind. There's a sense of being frozen in our fixation to the point where the essential qualities of our true nature, the natural love and peace and joy and clarity and beauty that we fundamentally are and always have been, is not necessarily very available to us. And so when that's our experience, it seems like we have to get those things from the outside, and we never quite can. And so the experience of being centered in your ego, as I'm sure you know from your own experience, is we feel limited, we feel clunky. It's not so much fun. There's a lot of conflict and anxiety inherent to being in the parts of ourself that are frozen in fixation. But it's important to realize that in the same way that ice is always still fundamentally water, even though it behaves very differently to water when it's frozen, so too your soul, even your ego, is still fundamentally made of the divine presence. That our ego is really just the parts of our soul that are opaque, that are frozen, that aren't fluid and clear and free. But that even our ego is still part of God. We're still a soul of God. This is a really important distinction because it helps us to let go of what I think is a very outdated and unhelpful paradigm, which is that we have to try to kill off our ego. So just in the same way that we don't have to hack away at the ice, we can let the warmth of the sun melt the ice and transform it. So too, this is a helpful way to give us a new way, a kinder and more compassionate and surprisingly more potent and effective way to deepen spiritually and to let authentic surrender happen. You may already know from your years of walking a path that the name of the game for spiritually deepening it really comes back to surrender, right? Although, so surrender really is the quintessence of all paths. Surrendering of the reins of control, surrendering of our delusions, letting go of what's not fundamentally true. Ultimately, surrender isn't even optional for us human beings, even when we don't consciously think of ourselves on a spiritual path. Because eventually we're going to be asked to let go of everything, eventually. So it's going to help us in our life to have a kinder, more meaningful and fulfilling ride through life when we get with the program and we learn to let surrender happen. Surrender, though, has been greatly misunderstood by many people, even people who are very genuine on the path, is merely a transcendent kind of surrender. I hear so many people say, oh, that's just my ego, and thinking we just need to transcend it. Well, you might have tried that. I did too. Not so easy, huh? So sometimes our understanding of even what surrender is isn't quite correct, right? The surrender really is surrendering into what is now, surrendering into here, surrendering into what is so. And it's not only transcendent up and over, it's really in and through. It's surrendering to right where you are. And if we surrender to right where we are, we find that it's really a yielding to an unshakable presence that's always here, that's always been here. So we see that surrender isn't really something we do, it's more something we learn to allow. So just like you, your ordinary sense of yourself, your ego, you don't do spiritual transformation. But when you relax the interference for that transformation, somehow it finds you. So this true surrender is really a matter of ego relaxation. It's simple, but it's also very subtle. So I want to explain a little bit more because ego relaxation is simultaneously a transmission, a non-conceptual transmission, something that we just open to and we allow it to come and affect us, to take us into a state of grace, a state that is not of our ego, but it's also an ongoing practice. So I'll share from my personal experience, because that's the way I know how to share firstly about the transmission of ego relaxation. It found me when I was in my mid-30s and I had already been on the spiritual path for many years. At that time in my life, I was a spiritual director of a groundbreaking interfaith seminary in the UK. I'd been dedicated to my own spiritual path and I was already supporting others in theirs for a good 15 years before this moment. This moment when I happened to be on pilgrimage at the ashram that was of Sri Ramana Maharshi. You may have heard of him. If not, you might want to look him up. So I didn't have any particular connection to Ramana at that time. I was a dedicated student of A Course in Miracles. I was already grounded deeply in the ongoing study of the teachings and practices of the world's wisdom traditions. So I wasn't looking for anything special when I sat in one of the caves that he'd lived in and settled into meditation. I already had a meditation practice of many years, and by grace that day, I wasn't trying to get anything, wasn't trying to get anywhere special. I just settled into meditation on a dusty old cushion in a very hot cave, and this transmission came upon me. I heard, although it wasn't a usual hearing, no one's voice spoke it, but it was as like a voice of silence reverberated through me saying, be nothing, do nothing, get nothing, become nothing, seek for nothing, relinquish nothing, be as you are, rest in God. Or perhaps right now, just in hearing me say this, you get a whiff of the complete stillness, the complete purity, the possibility of how it is when the whole engine of separate somebodyness and conditioning completely ceases. For me, it was like a moment of complete death, not in a negative way, of course, but it was of a complete cessation. I don't remember how long I was in that cave or how long I was in that state, because it was as if one life came to an end and another life began. So it wasn't another life of a somebody. It wasn't, okay, now I've got this wonderful spiritual experience. All I remember was being in that depth that I was, and that there was nothing else. There was no one else. And I remember merging out of that cave and being in this depth of peace that was indescribable. It was like I had been given an instant vacation from the stress and struggle of what my late dear friend Neil Rogan called our mego. Separation and conditioning, the one we call me, gone. It was profoundly peaceful, was profoundly and infinitely empty, but not in a deficient way, like being the shimmering emptiness of the universe, like being in the womb out of which boundless love and all the beautiful and blessed states emerge. The effect when I walked out of that cave was just of utter simplicity, utter naturalness. Everything was fine exactly the way it was. There was no need for anything or anyone to change. There was nothing that was needed to fix or get or do or prove or become. Nothing. So this state lasted for about 3 weeks continuously, no thoughts, no judgments, right? And then there was this point where, the ordinary personality began to reappear. But the same time that happened, there was that same voice that spoke in the cave saying, now integrate it. And thankfully, I had enough understanding about what a true spiritual path is, that deep realization isn't necessarily just being in one state all the time, right? That it's the wisdom that these states reveal that is really the gold, that all states come and go, even very beautiful, noble ones. That it's not about trying to get to and hold on to one state. So, there was a sense of the ordinary personality returning, but yet I wasn't as identified with it. There was still the freedom and the spaciousness and the peace. And there was this experiential knowing of being, this is a new life now. This is a new life. And so powerful realizations. I'm sure you've had some realizations so far on your journey. Maybe some things have changed for you too. Always involves death and rebirth. That's the nature of transformation. And so in the time after this, for about 2 years, there was a process I went through of immense change going on in my life. And sometimes that happens where, without you trying to make things go away or change, it's as if some great big hand comes across the chessboard of life, just changing all the pieces. It was very profound for me. And in that time, it was as if I was being asked to let go of all of my familiar ways of knowing myself and navigating the world, to really let go of all of the structures in my life that were holding together the self I no longer was. So I could see that the invitation was to surrender into that process of a great undoing, a great disassembling, right? A great disassembling of the self that I had known, that I had called me, right? And the ways of navigating the world that came with that. So letting go of just one way of being in the world or one way of knowing ourselves can be profound and very important and noble and beautiful, and yet it can also be terrifying. My question was, how do I live in this ordinary world? How do I relate, work, show up, create, earn a living, all the stuff that I'm sure you need to deal with too, without picking back up the neurotic habits, without reconstellating as an ego that I knew I wasn't anymore in order to live life? So this is a really powerful question, and I'm sure it's a question you have for yourself too. How can we be in this world, but from a deeper place without having to keep contracting back into those learned patterns of the past that are very clunky and were laid down very long ago? So before the awakening in the cave, I used to think that I had to somehow purify myself. I used to think that I had to make certain tendencies and features of my personality go away, not be there anymore, right? So the insecurity that I felt, right? The feeling that, the control tendencies that I had, right? The ambition that I had, all these things that I didn't like about myself. And I wanted to make them go away, not be there. I wanted to stamp these things out through spiritual practice. I really tried, right? But I realized after the cave that I had been mistaken in that approach, that I really started to see that what was really needed was to relax, not to try to annihilate my ego, but to relax identifying with my ego, to understand the patterns and the defenses that had insecurity or not good enough within them, or tendencies of control or defense. Not beat myself up for having that, but to just see the roots of it. And just like we do in yoga, where we go into a yoga pose and we notice, our body's a little tight there, and if you breathe and you just go to where you can go, but you don't push, somehow things happen. There's an opening that takes place when things are ready. So I started to see that this ego relaxation transmission that had taken me into this exquisite depth of what we all really are wasn't just a transmission, a moment of beauty and luminosity from just me, for one human being, it started to reveal that it was also an ongoing practice for any one of us, for every moment of our life. That ego relaxation was not only a gift of grace, but it was a how to work with these tendencies of ego that exist in all of us, to work with our particular brand of ego, our personality structure, and learn to relax out of the automatic defensiveness, the automatic judgment, the automatic pushing and pulling and trying to change it and fix it and direct it, right? And also to relax into deeper experience, to relax into the new possibilities, to relax into emptiness, relax into love. What's really asked of us in this practice of ego relaxation is just to be present deeply. Be in our body, be here now, and feel everything, right? We're not going to die from feeling what we feel. It's okay. To feel everything is how the heart opens, how the system opens, while doing nothing to change or fix or rearrange your experience. This, my friend, is how you are found by a grace deeper than your mind. How that grace that's always there in the center of being bubbles back up like a spring from within you, brings your depth and your truth and your beauty back into your accessible experience. So this learning to be present and undefended with all parts of our experience is essentially the opposite of what ego's doing, of what most of us are all doing habitually and often unconsciously most of the time. And so learning to be present and undefended and open-hearted right where you are with all parts of your experience, whatever your experience happens to be, and that means all of your emotions, whether they're egoic or not. It means your circumstance, whether you want it or not. It means what is here now, opening to it rather than contracting and closing against it. And as you learn this, you can stay present, you can feel what's here, you can not pick up at defense, do nothing. Something really beautiful and profound starts to happen all of itself. A reality deeper than your ego begins to come back online. You naturally start to see what is and what isn't. And you see without judgment. You see without the need for condemnation. You see with compassion. So this happens because your soul, just like your body has this program in it we call homeostasis, where if you break a bone in your body, doctor puts it in a cast and tells you to go away and come back in 6 weeks. And the doctor doesn't do the healing, your body does the healing. The doctor provides the right conditions for your body to heal itself. Well, your soul has that homeostatic quality to it also. It's natural for you to be free and clear and loving and whole. Your soul knows how to come back to that, right? If you give it half of the chance. And so ego relaxation is about allowing what is natural to come back online, allowing you to come back home to the freedom and the joy and the peace and the beauty that is your birthright. So you might be hearing me say this and say, yeah, that sounds great, but how's it going to help me get past my problems? I understand. You know, our ego is always oriented to how can I fix my problems? And it always seems like, yeah, I've got to fix my problems first. I've got to fix the relationship. You know, I've got to fix my weight. I've got to fix my financial problems. I've got to achieve these goals in my career and my finances. And then I can get round to this ego relaxation thing. I understand. So We have to, though, call its bluff, because in this ordinary life, right, of this world of impermanence that we're all in together, there's always going to be problems of some kind, right? There's always going to be ups and downs in our relationships. There's always going to be ups and downs in our political situation. There's always going to be things that need to be addressed, right? Our finances, our health, our relationships, our work, right? Our body. And so ego relaxation, do nothing, does not mean you check out, you're passive, you resign, and you don't take care of these things on the ordinary level. Quite the opposite. Actually, in the long term, this practice of being present and open-hearted and undefended right where you are supports you to be more efficient and effective and direct and clear in your functioning. It's a miracle, but it does take you there. But we need to be aware that our ego is always on a mission to fix the problem and then, right, to get to spiritual work. And the ego also has within it a deep kind of pernicious belief that we need to fix this problem we call me, right? Self-improvement. So this that I'm offering you is not a path of self-improvement. This is not about helping you become the best version of yourself. This is about relaxing all the versions. This is not about fixing yourself or amputating or rearranging anything. This path is about helping you to see and understand your ego with clarity and precision and compassion, so you can see if it's possible to let your ego construct and its activity melt. Your ego construct, your presumption you really are a separate somebody, and your ego activity, meaning all the ways in which you're habitually trying to grasp for this or that, trying to fix this, get that, get to a better situation, fix certain parts of yourself, and make certain things go away, all from the standpoint of I'm a separate somebody, which when we really look at that, it's like a little child trying to figure it out. Your ego was laid down and structured by the time you were 6, which means that when you're trying to fix and rearrange your situation or yourself from the perspective of I need to change this, I need to change myself, really you're putting a 6-year-old in charge of your life. It's not very wise, because ego is only capable of repeating the misunderstanding and the learning from the past. It's not capable of a fresh, creative response to life in the now. So as A Course in Miracles says, why try to fly with the tiny wings of a sparrow when the mighty wings of an eagle have been given you? So the mighty wings of an eagle are the mighty wings of the grace of your deeper nature. And the core problem, the tiny wings of the sparrow that are flapping around, are really just the part of us that doesn't quite know who we really are. Wants to, but doesn't understand the picture. Because we are ignorant, and that is what most spiritual traditions say ego is. Ego is our ignorance. Not that we're bad, but we're ignoring a deeper reality. Right? We're disconnected from that deeper reality. And that's why we feel we have to fix our problems. That's why we feel we're not good enough. Ego always feels like that because it's disconnected from the reality that is everything. So you don't have to do anything to get a better ego. And even further, that your efforts to try to improve your fix yourself are probably what's been blocking the grace of your deeper nature from revealing more of itself to you. So where do we go from this? Just take a few breaths and notice how you're feeling. You may be feeling excited, you may be feeling confused, whatever you're feeling in response to what I'm saying is okay. So the practice of ego relaxation really comes to whatever you're here feeling, whatever your experience is right now, opening and softening and allowing it to be. This is the exact opposite of grasping and trying to get and fix and control and strategize, all from a grounding that isn't actually true. So we orient to ego relaxation if we just say, okay, I'm going to be here now. Feel my feet on the ground, feel my bum on the chair, feel the breath coming in and out, opening, softening, allowing. This is the advanced but very simple practice of non-doing. Melts the usual ego activity and constructs in a very simple and beautiful and direct way. If you've ever studied any Mahamudra meditation, if you've ever looked at Taoist Wu Wei practice, or if you've ever looked at the Christian mystic John of the Cross, you'll recognize something familiar here. That this yielding, this soft being here, this relaxing our defenses, is actually how we open unconditionally and how we open to a deeper grace, how we let ego begin to melt. There's no need for commentary, there's no need for judgment, there's no wrong experience, there's no right experience, there's no spiritual or unspiritual. We're just being here, and we're seeing if it's possible to relax the ego efforting, the ego grasping and rejecting and abandoning ourself. And so as you open and soften and allow your experience, you're relaxing the default resistance of ego, the no, right? That's always the primary tendency of ego. And something miraculous starts to take place. So this opening and softening and allowing your experience as it is right now to unfold brings online the practice of ego relaxation, nudges us into the state of grace. And so what it starts to do for us is it first helps us to settle the agitation of ego, settle the darting about that's bumping us back to the surface of our personality. Opening and softening and allowing our experience begins to soothe the suffering, soothe the anxiety, soothe the places where we haven't received what we've needed. Brings a soothing quality to our soul that helps us. But it helps us to allow dissolving of untruth, of identifying with patterns, identifying with constructs that aren't the deepest reality. It allows the dissolving of the structure of our personality and its outworn ways of being. And that liberates us and brings back online wisdom that helps us to flow gracefully with what's happening in life in the now. So implicit within ego relaxation philosophically is an important underpinning that could best be described as an integrated non-duality. An integrated non-duality that's found in the perspectives of Kashmiri Shaivism, of Trika Yoga. It's really understanding that everything in existence isn't fundamentally separate, even though it might appear to be. That there's really only one divine consciousness that is constituting everyone and everything. Nothing but the divine, really. And so as we be here, as we feel everything, as we stay present, as we open and soften and allow, we start to see that ego and essence aren't really two separate things. And so there's nothing we have to kill off to get to somewhere superior. If you were to flip it and see the ego and essence as really the surface and depth of one ocean of consciousness, it's all divine, this ocean, even when it looks clunky and dense, just like the ocean on the surface sometimes can have big storms and choppy waves, but that same ocean, when you drop down, 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 is always calm and still at the base. So as you learn to practice ego relaxation, being present and open-hearted and undefended right where you are, now, in any moment, opening, softening, allowing your experience to unfold, rather than grasping and rejecting and trying to figure it out and fix it, we begin to find the deep peace and clarity and meaning and truth of our nature. And it's beautiful. So, I'm going to invite you to go into a practice. And sometimes when we do online offerings, it's really easy when it comes to the practice part to just flake out of that. But I'm really encouraging you to actually give yourself the gift of doing the practice, because it's when we actually take a teaching like this and work with it that it starts to actually have a powerful effect on us. So I'm going to invite you to get a pen or something to write with and to journal into the ways you get caught up in ego efforting. What does that look like for you? Right? Where are you trying harder to figure it out or fix it, but from within a consciousness of separation? Right? Where are you efforting, pushing, pulling, grasping, rejecting? Where are you leaving yourself? So just take some moments. I would suggest 10 minutes would be optimal. Just to journal into the ways you get caught up in ego efforting. And name the specific ways. Maybe this happens when you get close to certain feeling states. Or maybe a certain stream of judgment cranks up that sounds like your mother or your father on a bad day in your head. Or maybe it's just a habit to push yourself. And so for everything that you name about the ways in which you get caught up in ego efforting, trying harder to figure it out or fix it, but from within with that consciousness that feels separate, take a little moment to look at what's driving this really. Is it fear? Is it judgment? So just write free form without editing. And maybe just pause this recording while you journal, giving yourself the time that you need to explore this. And so, whatever you saw in your journaling there's nothing you need to do about it. So I'm just going to invite you right now. What's it like right now if you open, soften, and allow your experience to be exactly as it is. What's it like right now if you open and soften and allow your experience to be exactly as it is? What's it like in your body right now if you open and soften and allow your experience exactly as it is? What's it like in your heart right now if you soften, open, and allow your experience exactly as it is? What's it like in your awareness and your understanding right now if you soften, open, and allow your experience exactly as it is? Just keep softening, opening, and allowing your experience exactly as it is. Stay with this inquiry, my friend, and it will nudge you deeper and further into the state and the practice of ego relaxation that gives you back to yourself and helps you walk the spiritual path with greater potency and compassion. So thank you for being here with me. Thank you for your own dedication to yourself. And let us remember that everything that we receive here is not just for our own benefit, but it is for the benefit of the whole human family. So stay close to this and live into it in the coming days and weeks.